Okay, in this video tutorial, I want to talk about the XSheet in ToonBoom Harmony. So the XSheet can be a really helpful tool for planning out your animations, particularly if there's dialogue or acting, and it's just a way to kind of think through your scenes kind of in the earlier stages of the process. It's also can be helpful for collaborating with other animators. For instance, if you start with the keyframes, you can kind of have the XSheet going and it'll kind of give, if you pass it off to someone who's doing in-betweens, it can be a helpful guide for them in terms of what you want to have happen here in your animation. So you can see right here, I have ToonBoom opening, and this is just a new project that I started up. And I switched my view. So my interface, I changed it from the default to the hand-drawn. And you can see that the XSheet shows up here to the right when you have it set to the hand-drawn interface. You can also find the XSheet if you go up to Windows and then go down to XSheet right here, and that'll pull it up. So you can see right here we have the frame count going down. So right now my animation is 60 frames long. Let's just kind of shorten this down a little bit. Let's just take this down to around 24 right here. And so you can see that we have a frame count from 1 to 25. Let's do one more. There we go. 1 to 24. And you can see that there's one column going left to right here, and we can add new columns in here. And so right now it's just this drawing column that's right there. So let's just delete this, and you'll see if I just click on this and then right click and then delete that column, you can see it goes away right there in the XSheet as well. So I'll just kind of start fresh here and I'll just create a color card, and that won't show up there. And then I'll create a new drawing. Notice that I work with 4 layers in my drawing. Sometimes, usually when I'm working, it kind of depends, but on the underlay art, I like to set that to bitmap because I'll sketch things out there. And then I'll kind of do these 3 layers up here for kind of the finished vector art right there. You can also set it up so that you're kind of just initially doing all of your initial drawings on the this bitmap layer and then create a whole new drawing, for your finished version. So anyway, I'm just going to call this drawing 1, add and close. And you can see drawing 1 gets added right there. And let's show how we can kind of start adding to this. So let's say that we have a scene with dialogue here. And so I'm going to kind of go over setting up the XSheet right here and hopefully kind of show some of these settings that are in here that can be useful. So let's say I have dialogue in my scene. So in order to import sound, and I want it to kind of show up down here in my timeline, but I also want it to show up in my XSheet right here. And fortunately, it should automatically show up if we import it just the normal way. So in Harmony, I'll just go to File, Import, and then go to Sound right here. And on my desktop, I have just an audio memo that I already recorded right here. And one thing to take note of is ToonBoom has trouble reading M4A files and things like that. So you want to convert it over to a WAV file. So if you're having trouble importing, just try to get it into a WAV file. So I'll press Open. And you can see right there, there's now a second column and it says speaking. That's the name of my audio file right there. And so the first thing you want to do, they're already turned on right here, but you just want to make sure that these 2 buttons are enabled right here. So this turns on sound on playback, and this turns on sound for scrubbing right here. So when I scrub through, and then if I press the play button, hello, this. So I'm just saying, hello, this, and the sentence goes on, but we're cutting it off because I want to keep this demo, nice and tidy here. And so, hello, this. And so having those 2 on and being able to kind of enable the scrubbing is really helpful right here. And so you can see this is just a line right now, and it says the name of the file right here. And you're probably going to want this to appear like an audio wave. And so to do that, you just right click right here and then go down to sound display and then go down to waveform. So again, you can right click anywhere within this column right here. So it's right click, go down to sound display and then waveform right there. And so now we can see the waveform column. If you want this audio wave to appear larger or smaller, there's this little magnifying glass right here. And if I just click it to the left, I can make it smaller or larger right there. Also take note that these columns, I can make them larger or smaller like this just by clicking on the very edge and then dragging it in. So if I want my wave column to be small or large, I can just kind of expand it right there as well. And so let's just keep this at a medium size, somewhere around there. And we have our audio wave. And so we're going to kind of bring in what's called annotations right here, which is also similar. Just you can just write down your own notes in here. And so I'm going to create an annotation where I sound out the audio right here so I can try to do lip sync. And then I'll do an annotation for action and like planning out the timing of the overall animation here. So there's this button that's right here, and it's called the add column button right there. And so I'm just going to click on that, and you're going to get this pop-up window. And it's a little confusing at first because you can see you can add a drawing layer, which is the same as if you press the plus button down here. But you can see there's this type panel, and this is unique to the XSheet. So you're not going to get this type panel when you add a layer by clicking on this plus button down there. And if you go down here, you can see we can add all kinds of stuff. We could create a sound column like we just did, but down here in annotation is what we want. So just go down to the bottom where it says annotation, and we can even name it right here. So I'll just call this dialogue right here, and I'll add and close, and you can see it adds a dialogue box right here. Also take note that there's this little brush up here. And so when I scrub through right here, so my H is kind of right there. So the brush is on, so I can just kind of draw in an H right there. And there's a few settings that we can kind of go into here. So you can draw on an H like that. I'm using a Wacom tablet, so if I flip my pen over, it turns into an eraser automatically. So if you're using a Wacom tablet, you can just flip your pen and it'll be an eraser. But I can also click right here, and you see it changes from eraser to a pen right there. So I can draw in an H. I can also select with this little arrow column right there. So I can just select those 3 columns if I want to delete it. And you can see that I have these dot indicators showing that they're selected right there. And I can just press delete. And that's another way that you can erase right there. So one last thing is in here, we can also kind of click into it, double click, and then I can just type an H right there as well. So if you're more comfortable typing, you can also double click in there. And let's see here, some additional options here. I'll switch it back to the pen, and I'll click on this column, and oops, I'll click on this column and delete it, switch back to my pen. So I'll something else we can do right here is, let's just erase that out, is I can right click in here. And if I go down to annotation, I have some options right here. And so this is kind of a running theme that you're going to see right here is right clicking. It's going to open up a lot of things in terms of different things we can do. We also have this 3-line like hamburger menu up here. And we can also kind of go into some settings in here as well. So just kind of keep in mind in the future, if you're trying to find settings, remember right clicking is useful, and remember that we have this menu up here, which can be useful for some things if you're having trouble finding something, or if you just want to explore it further. So I'm going to right click right here, go down to annotation, and you can see right here, I can change the pen width. Oops. I can change the pen width. So I'm on the thinnest option right here, but I can thicken it up. So if I want to go to like 3, for instance, the pen width will now be much more broad when I draw that in. I'll just press that in and undo. And so that's under annotation, and then pen width right here. I think 2 is a good option. And then I'll go back, and you can see you can change the eraser width, and you can also change the pen color. So right now the pen is black, but if I go to pen color, I can make this a red pen right here. Oh, I need to press OK. And this can be helpful for kind of visually organizing this if this XSheet starts to get a little overly busy for you right there. So for the dialogue, let's just kind of work through this real quick. So I have my H right there, and I'm just going to do my playhead. So I have the E. And when I'm sounding this out, I'm kind of thinking about the mouth shapes that you would draw for animation here. So we're already on the L. All right. And so when you're kind of drawing this in, try to get like a little bit ahead of the audio curve right here. You don't want to be behind. You want to kind of be on the front edge of these vowels and have your animation kind of come just a little bit before rather than a little bit after to have it kind of look right when you're animating. And so this is, you can see that the scrub is really useful when kind of working through that. And so I can just test it out. Right. So This is kind of the way I usually kind of work out dialogue is just by writing it out like this. And I give it its own sheet right here. And so I also like to create a column for action. So I'll just make a new column. So same thing, we're just going to create another annotation column right here. So it's just this column button right here, click it. And we're going to remember we have the different types. So I'll go down to annotation, oops, and I'll add and close. And if I forget to rename it, you can also just double click up here and I can just call this action and I will apply it and close it. And one thing to keep in mind, remember we can expand this out to have it larger. So for this action column, I usually have this be a lot larger because I'm drawing things out, drawing graphs, it depends on the animation right here. And this is just for me. Sometimes I like to kind of have the dialogue be in a color so that I can just kind of color code things in my mind. And then for this annotation column, I might change the pen color to, like a blue pen or something like that. So we have it set to blue. You'll kind of write notes for a kind of a pose and then kind of draw things out in a graph like this. So you can kind of think from one keyframe to the next. And here you can kind of plan out the spacing of your drawings beforehand right here as well. So let me just edit undo that. And so that is the action column right there. Okay, so I have my drawing layer here, and let's kind of start keyframing here. And so to create a keyframe, it's the same as down here, right? So if we want to create a blank frame, you can press this button. It's also up here as well. We can also duplicate a frame right here, a drawing. So let's create an empty drawing right here. So I'll press that button. You can see a new drawing shows up down here. We can see it says number 1 up there. And let's say that my character is static until they start talking. So I'll just bring my playhead to this point right here. I'll zoom in on my timeline just by pressing 2. So 1, 2 right there. You can also zoom in and out on your XSheet with the same shortcut. So just hover your cursor over the XSheet and then 1, 2 right there. And so right here, I'm just going to click on this frame right here on my timeline, press function F5, and I'm extending that frame. And so I'm going to give myself another keyframe right here. And I'm going to just create 3 keyframes just to kind of demonstrate this XSheet right here. So the third one right here, F5, extend it out. So right here, you can see that this is measured out by drawing 1, 2, drawing 3 right there. And so let's just draw this out. So I'm under my underlayer layer, which is a raster layer. And I'm just going to have like a smiley face that's on the left. That is for keyframe 1. Keyframe 2 will be a second drawing in the middle. And then the third keyframe, I'm going to draw a drawing on the right. All right, so great animation, right? So
Hello, this.
and so you can see right here that I'm drawing 1, drawing 2, drawing 3 right there. And so something that might happen is while you're animating, especially when you're kind of brainstorming, the order might get messed up. So let's just say we get right here, then I realize, oh, I need another like rough keyframe right here. So I'll just press as normal, press the insert a new frame right there. And then I'll draw a new drawing up here. And I'm going to give it wings. And so you can see right here that we have drawing 1, 2, 3, and then 4 right there, right? So you can see that it'll start to kind of get out of order as you creatively start to work right here. All right, so when it gets out of order like that, what we'll do, and this, I have a little trouble remembering this one, and so we'll right click and then go down to, this is under drawings, and then you can see you can rename by drawing or you can rename by frame, and I much prefer to rename by frame right here. It's just makes more sense to me. So right click on the drawing column, go down to drawings, and then that's the part that I have trouble remembering usually is drawings right there, and then rename by frame right there. And so you can see right here, if we click off of this, oh, and I'm sorry, I need to right click and shift and select all these frames to make sure it does all of them. So we'll go down to drawings, rename by frame. And so now, there we go, we got it. So we have drawing 1. We have drawing 1, we have drawing 8. Sorry, the drawing that starts on the 8th frame, the one that starts on the 12th frame, and then the one that starts on the 17th frame right there. And so now we have these renamed by their frame count right there. And so that can be a really helpful thing to have organized right there. So let's see here. In terms of organizing your XSheet, I'm just going to show this really quick, is we have this button right here. So if we click on that, and then we can expand this out. Let's see if I can get this to be visible. There we go. So right here, let's kind of enable some of these. So we have these buttons right here. And basically what we can do is I turned them all off just then. So you can see that the XSheet is now nothing showing up. And so these can be helpful for if you want to just kind of, if the XSheet gets too busy, you can kind of start hiding things. So for instance, we have the drawings right here. We have, let's see here, our annotations right here, which is indicated by A right there. So that's where I have my dialogue in action. And then we have the sound right here. And so let's just say it's getting a little too busy and I don't need the sound wave anymore because I was using it to kind of figure out how I wanted to space out my dialogue. I can just press that little sound icon and then it's cleared out of my XSheet in terms of its visibility. And so I can just, to hide that back away, I can just slide that back off. And again, to get to that menu is this button right here. And let's see here. So one of my favorite parts of the XSheet right here is, let's just say that this drawing right here is a main keyframe. Let's say that these two are some in-betweens right there. And then this is another keyframe right there. Well, we have these buttons right here where we can label the frame. So we have keyframe, we have a breakdown drawing, and then we have in between right there. And so I can just go to my first drawing right here, and then I can click this button right here for keyframe. Oops, let's see here. I have to make sure it's selected with those little black dots right there. And so right there, I press K for keyframe, and you see it gets that little red marker right there. And so this is labeled as a keyframe now, and this will really help you stay organized once you start kind of building out your project. And you can see here in your timeline, it gets this little red marker right there as well, which can be helpful for organization. So I'll go back to my final frame right here, select it in my XSheet, press the keyframe button again. So now that's marked as a keyframe. And so right here, let's go to keyframe that's on, or say the frame that's on frame 8 right there. Let's call that a breakdown drawing. Oh, whoops, I have them all selected right now. And so just make sure that is that one frame selected. And I'll call that a breakdown. And then let's just say this is an in-between up here with the little flying character. So again, this is on a frame 12. So I just click on frame 12 right there, and I'll mark that as an in-between. And so right here, we now have this kind of organized this way where we can kind of see this. So now when I start in-betweening, it's like, okay, I know this is a keyframe, this is a keyframe, that's a breakdown, and it'll help you stay organized there. But here's another trick that happens with this, is this actually helps with your onion skinning as well. So let's just say I have my drawing right here, and I only want my onion skin to see keyframes, for instance. I can, so I can click right here. And so we have the onion skinning right here. And let's go to the advanced onion skinning window. So if we go up to Windows and then down to onion skin right here, we have our onion skin. And right now it's kind of selected, so only the key drawings are showing up. And take note right here that my breakdown and my in-between is not showing up right there. And so if I click this, you can see now my breakdown showing up. If I click that, I can see my in-between showing up right there. And so by default, I think all these should be turned on right there. So this was just kind of a setting that I had before earlier today or something. So again, with the onion skin right here, it'll probably be set like something like this by default, where probably everything's kind of showing up right here. And we're not going to worry about these three over here because we're mainly focused on KBI right here. So when you're onion skinning, you can kind of turn off your in-between. So that's the reason that I marked this as an in-between right here, so that I can kind of turn it on and off right there. That's the point, at least within my workflow, of labeling it right there on frame 12. But let's say that frame 8, I don't want to see it, and I only want to focus on keyframe 1 and keyframe 2 right there. I just press B, and then it's gone right here. And so this can be a helpful step labeling these, both because there's this kind of nice color coding that happens on your timeline, but secondly, because when you're doing your onion scanning, it kind of gives you some options to enable things. So again, when you go to Windows and then onion scanning right here, that's kind of the reason why these buttons are down here, is because of the XSheet, the labeling on the XSheet, and being able to turn on and off the visibility right there. Okay, so the last thing I want to show on the XSheet is, let's say, for instance, you like to animate using 2 layers right here. So let's say drawing 1, I'll just call this kind of like my sketch layer right here, where I kind of roughly sketch in my keyframes, and I'll apply and then close it down. And let's say, for instance, that I kind of do my keyframes right here, and I know that I need to animate this in 2s, 3s, or 4s or something. And I think, most of the time, like, I'm usually just working on one layer and then kind of adding new frames in here as I work. But something that you can do is, again, work on 2 layers. So I have my sketch layer right here, and I'll make a new layer right here. So a new drawing layer, and I'll just call this like finished, and I'll keep everything vector. And I'll add that and close it. And let's see here. My order got a little messed up over here, but that's okay. So I have my finished drawing layer over here. Oops. And so something you can do is, if I click in this column, the finished drawing column right here, and then I right click and I go to exposure, and then down to sequence fill right here. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. So again, I'm selecting all of these frames right here under my new finished drawing layer. I right click, go down to exposure, and then down to sequence fill right there. If I click on that, you'll get this menu right here. And we have the start value, the hold, and right now, so the hold is set to 4. And so if I were to press apply on this, you can see that I have it automatically converted that finished drawing into 4s right there. Let me press edit undo. I might have to close this and undo that. So let's do the same thing right here. So right click, down to exposure, down to sequence fill. And so by default, I think it'll be set at 2s. So if I did it right here, it would have 1, 2, 1, 2. It'd have everything filled out automatically in 2s, or I could set it to 3s, for example. Oh, not 23. Let's see if I can try this again. 3, there we go. And apply it. And so right there, I have it in 3s, and I can do it in 2s as well. So if you know that your finish animation is going to be on 3s, 2s, or 4s right here, you can create this new column right here, right click, go to exposure, and go to and then go to sequence fill, so second to the bottom. And then again, under hold, set it to 2s, 3s, and 4s, it automatically fills it. And so it just kind of saves you a step right there if you want to kind of save some time setting up your frames on the finishing process.